Hi there, everyone. This is another episode of the Here to Listen Community Awareness podcast. I'm pleased to say that we've got another one for you. This is Leonard Cheshire, also known as Agate House, which I'm hoping Dominic. Hi, Dominic.
Hi there. Hi.
Can give me some clarity on, because I'm never quite sure what to call it and how it sits within the framework. Interestingly, I had a podcast last week with a member of Sue Ryder, and he told me about how Sue Ryder and Leonard Cheshire were married.
That's absolutely right. Yes, yeah. They had their own separate charitable institutions, and I actually used to work for Sue Ryder, so I've sampled both sides of the relationship. But yeah, they had quite separate charities that they both ran in their own right. So quite interesting.
It was really, it was nice to hear, and I get the sort of an interesting picture of this married couple that are just doing tremendous amounts of good within their own community, to the point where they didn't just join one; they had two, like, we'll have one here and we'll have one there, and they're in Bedfordshire, as far as I know. I don't know how much more that extends beyond the county, but yeah, maybe you can say a little bit more about that as well. I'm curious about the organisation as a whole, and ultimately what your role is within the organisation as well. Go ahead.
Well, thanks, Adam. Leonard Cheshire, as some of you may know, he was a World War II pilot, and in fact received the Victoria Cross in World War II. So quite an interesting character. But after World War II, he was aware that there were some of his fellow RAF members who were seriously injured and had developed disabilities, but really had nowhere to go, nowhere to live, and he became aware of this real gap in care for people with disabilities. So he decided to make this a focus, and over the next few years, well, until he died about 15 years ago, I think, he opened up more and more care homes for people with disabilities. So Leonard Cheshire is a charity which focuses on those in our society with disabilities, mainly physical disabilities, although some learning disabilities as well. And we have now over 200 Leonard Cheshire homes across the country, and also some care provision in other countries as well, particularly in Africa, but mainly looking after people with severe disabilities. Mm-hmm. So quite a widespread organisation now, quite a big organisation, but a really important organisation for those who, for whatever reason, may have developed or be born with disabilities. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So Agate House itself is based in Ampthill in central Bedfordshire, and we have 36 beds or rooms here. They're all individual rooms, all with ensuite facilities, and it's a purpose-built home. Some care homes are adapted from large houses, which are then turned into care homes. This one was purpose-built in the 1970s, in the late 70s. So the facilities here are very good. We've got all the hoisting facilities. We've got everything on the ground floor. We've got wide doors that mean that wheelchairs can get through easily. We've got very good facilities for people with disabilities to be able to be as independent as possible, but with the extra support that we can give them.
What does a sort of average day look like for a service user?
Right. Well, one of the important aspects of our ethos is to give people as much choice as we can. So some people at, say, 7 o'clock, they will immediately want to get up and about, and they don't like to lie in bed. Other people might want to stay in bed until lunchtime. It's pretty much exactly the same as people out in the wider community. There's no difference really. So we try and give people as much choice as possible when they want to get up. We have breakfast served usually between 8 and 9 in the morning, and again, giving people as much choice as possible what they would like. We have an activities team here. So we have a large activities room where we run different activities on different days of the week. At the moment, we're a bit limited because we're not able to do some of the more communal activities that we used to do. But normally, there's a range of things going on. We do things like Pilates, we do film clubs, we do games and puzzle mornings and quizzes. We have a lady who comes in and does something called wheelchair dancing, which is like a sort of chair aerobics. So people, even people with quite severe disabilities, are doing activities in their chair. It might just be with their arms, but they're moving about. They're doing physiotherapy without even realizing it. They're just having fun, and she's leading them in these activities. We do, when we're allowed to, before COVID clamped things down a bit, we take people out for trips, recreational trips. December is absolutely mad here with taking people to pantomimes and shopping and all sorts of things. So we try to overcome a lot of those traditional boundaries that disabled people face in everyday life, and try and encourage them and help them wherever they're needed to be as independent as possible. It's really important.
Something that you alluded to, is you know, the elephant in the room is about the pandemic at the moment, and I've been recording these podcasts over different periods of time and different effects, and it's interesting that you say that you can't do quite as much, because I thought that within your own household you can kind of interact, and is it fair to say that that's not classed as a household exactly, so the service users can't interact perhaps as much as you'd think?
That's right. If you think about those members of our society that received a shielding letter, some of you may have been aware of that, the people who received a shielding letter from the government saying they had quite severe illnesses which made them particularly vulnerable if they were to catch the condition. Well, we've got currently 32 residents here, and effectively pretty much all of them would be in that category of being very, very vulnerable if they were to catch the condition. Often it's to do with breathing restrictions, which may be to do with their disability as well. Maybe they haven't got the upper body strength to fully inflate their lungs. Maybe they've had some lung damage over the years, or they may have a heart condition associated with their disability, or some kidney problems or liver problems associated with their disability. So pretty much everybody here is in a vulnerable category where we need to be very cautious about their exposure to COVID. So we do allow some interaction within the home still, and there are some, but we still have to respect social distancing. And so some of the big social activities where everybody gets together in one room, we're not doing things like that at the moment. It's just too risky that one person might have picked it up and then spread it to everybody else. We're also not in common with every care home in the land at the moment. We're not able to have any visitors from outside coming in unless they have a sort of medical role, like a doctor or a nurse or a chiropodist or somebody. So our poor residents are being deprived of their visitors at the moment. But one thing we have done is facilitated conversations like this one here, where we've got some iPads, we've got family members who will make an appointment to call in, and we will arrange an iPad conversation over something like FaceTime with their relative, and that's really important to keep them in touch. But it's a hard time at the moment for anybody in residential care.
Yeah, and I wondered how you're managing their expectations. I wondered how it might have been received. I wonder about cognitive understanding sometimes of what's going on. How's that been affecting you?
Yes, so it has sometimes been a bit of a challenge, but I think most people are now understanding why we're having to put these restrictions in, and that it really is so important that we protect our service users here. family members too are really desperate to come and see their loved ones, and it is quite hard because although there's been a certain amount of relaxing of restrictions out in the community, we're dealing with a very much more vulnerable group here, and we can't have the same freedom that is happening in the community at the moment. But we're hoping within the next few weeks we can first of all arrange some visiting outside out in the grounds, and then a bit further down the line we can welcome visitors actually into the home. Yeah. So it's going to be baby steps, but we'll get there eventually.
Yeah, and understandably cautious. And I think that most people that are overly cautious can receive some criticism about, oh, you know, it's not that bad, all that. But I can see with the cases that you said about people being exceptionally vulnerable that there needs to be over, you know, you could say over, but it actually might be sufficiently cautious for all we know. You know, but
absolutely. And it has been well reported in the media about the challenges that many care homes have had nationally, and a very high number of deaths as a result of COVID have come from care homes. So within Leonard Cheshire, I think they've managed it very well, and we've had some very clear guidance, and we've had a very good supply of PPE. And at the moment, certainly here, we have no service users with COVID at all. So we have had some staff affected, myself included, but at the moment we don't have any staff affected either. So it's hopefully an improving picture, and we'll see how the next few weeks go. But
I hope there's a time where, you know, when I was talking to you about the NCS as a whole and the social action, and, you know, the opportunities, I think, for young people to come in and deliver social action, be it, you know, an entertainment day or anything like that, are possible. But I mean, on the subject of that, can you think of any ways that our young people can still support you as an organisation in the coming months?
Yes, well, there's a number of things that could be done. I mean, we do have some volunteers here. We have people who come in and help with the gardens, even just to sort of do some planting or some weeding, or to mow the lawn or things like that. So if you were an outdoorsy sort of person, that's always a real help, just to make sure it's a nice, pleasant environment for people to go and sit out in. Mm-hmm. We have some other volunteers, one or two, who come in to visit people who don't necessarily have any other visitors. That's quite common in care homes. And there's no judgment attached to that. Sometimes there's very good reasons. They may not have any other relatives, or they may have had to move far away from where they originally lived. So there are sometimes people who don't have other visitors, and they have the staff here that look after them, but they don't have many people who come in to see them specifically. So we sometimes have people who have come in just to have a game of Scrabble or something with somebody, you know, or just give them some company, and that's a really nice thing to do. The other thing, the other way that people can help is to do some fundraising, do some event. I had a place for the London Marathon this year for Agate House. Unfortunately, it's been deferred until October, and we're still waiting to hear whether it's going to go ahead then. But that's an example of an event where you can get yourself sponsored to raise some money for a worthy cause. And I really passionately believe that this kind of care for those in our society who are really, really disadvantaged, often from the day that they're born, is a really worthy cause, and they really need somebody to fight their corner, because there are so many hurdles in the way. So I really feel it's a really good thing to get involved with, to support people with profound disabilities who just need somebody to fight their corner for them.
I feel like you're quite well placed as well, because I feel like Amtil's like smack bang in the middle of the county, and our young people are predominantly from the central Bedfordshire area, you know, as far north as, say, Bedford Borough. and all over really, North Luton essentially. So yeah, kind of well placed for young people. As you were talking there, I was thinking about some other projects, just some ideas. I'm reminded of a project that took place last year where young people captured the stories of some of the older people within the homes. And when you talk about there are people in Agate House that don't have anyone, I get this sense of kind of a fading away, as someone who doesn't really have anyone to talk to or relay their story, and just kind of disappearing from history, if you like, without being too dramatic, but being able to maybe do a project around capturing people's stories, and putting them out there somewhere, and one of the things that we always focus on with young people is how good they are with tech and social media, and what kind of things could be, put out there in that sense. I wonder if that might be an idea.
Absolutely, yeah. It's really important that people's stories are not lost. We have one service user, a chap called Paul, who he was born with cerebral palsy, and he's done a number of talks to groups. He has his speech is quite impaired by his condition, but he, when one gets to know him, one can understand him better. And so he often talks with a friend who is very good at translating what he's saying. And he tells his story very eloquently, actually. And he talks about, his presentation is called "Does He Take Sugar?" And it's really about what it is to live with a disability in today's society and the sort of challenges that he's faced over the years. And it's to hear it from the horse's mouth, from a person who's lived that real day-to-day life with disabilities, is very powerful. And it's so important that these stories are not lost. Because it's absolutely inspiring and moving to listen to him.
Yeah, I agree, and I relate to that. In my last job with Youth Action, I worked with a young guy called Johnny, and he had I think it was cerebral palsy, but I think you get subdivisions. He had kind of something related to that, but similar with the speech, I found. And I was nodding as you were saying, like you spend enough time with people, you do kind of you assimilate it almost.
Yeah.
It's a curious process, and one that I'm very new to in my last job, and also establishing a few ground rules to start with, like just being upfront and say, look, sometimes I don't understand what you're saying, and what I might ask you to do is just to kind of slow down a little bit, or help me understand you as well. And I think when you say about the stories that are not lost, there's no reason why that can't be the case with the way that we communicate with each other, that we adapt, we figure out a way through, I think, with things like that. So that sounds like quite a good idea.
Absolutely.
I was also thinking as a modern board gamer myself, and I say modern because things have really moved on since Scrabble, and I wonder about opportunities there too. And perhaps not in the middle of a lockdown, but there are online platforms for things like that. For example, I wonder if something can be worked along like that. I wonder about, you said earlier about the platforms like we're on at the moment, and how maybe they can be utilized with projects as well, be it the relaying of the story, or like you say, just being someone to listen to someone who doesn't have anybody else to visit. I think things like that might be an idea for social action projects as well. You mentioned fundraising. We do steer away from those as much as we can. That was the initial issue, let's say, with the NCS, that it was supposed to be very much about social action, and having a sort of long-lasting effect on people's lives. And fundraising's great, but sometimes it can have a bit of a disconnect. You raise money and then off it goes, and you don't have an association with it. And with the NCS lately, it's definitely pushing more towards sort of legacy-based stuff that young people can walk past and notice that they made a difference to, or people relaying stories to their family about how the NCS helped them. That's the kind of stories, links that we're looking for. However, there are still opportunities to raise money that might then buy something or purchase something, even if it's games, or something like that for you as an organisation. So I think there's plenty of ideas there, I think, as well.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
Just to wrap up a little, so with Leonard Cheshire, what it sounds like to me is that you're quite supported as an organisation. I got no sense from what you were saying about being a sort of life raft out in the sea and kind of having to deal with stuff. And I wondered about like the extended Leonard Cheshire kind of family, and you mentioned about it being dotted around the UK as well. So I kind of like the idea of that, where I imagine it would have started maybe with one institution or one building or whatever, and
Yes.
it's just, I suspect that it's just kind of grown and grown over time.
Yes, that's absolutely right. In fact, it started with one man. So Leonard Cheshire, a friend of Leonard Cheshire, Leonard Cheshire himself, found out that this chap was had a disability, and he invited him into his home. So he invited him to live with him, and Leonard Cheshire himself looked after this guy, and then the more he looked into it, the more he realised this was one of thousands of people out there who had come back from the war with disabilities, and so he realised there's this huge, untapped, unresourced need out there that maybe he could do something about. So yes, it's grown from very small beginnings into quite a big charity now.
Mm-hmm. And with Agate House, they call it Agate House because that's sort of like your location in terms of being part of the charity. Is that what that means?
Do you know? I don't know where the name agate came from. It is a semi-precious stone, I believe, but I don't know. I'm not 100% sure of the history of that. As I say, I shall have to research that myself. But I'm a nurse by background myself, and in the late 90s, I was one of the district nurses working here in Ampthill, just by coincidence, and I used to visit Agate House occasionally as a district nurse, so I've known about it professionally for quite a few years. But where the name came from, I don't know.
Okay. Maybe that's something for our young people to be tasked with, maybe a story around Leonard Cheshire, up to this point. So, okay. Thank you, Dominic. I appreciate your time today. What we'll do with the podcast is we'll put it out on the YouTube channel as well. I'll include the contact details that you gave me within the comments, so that if there's any young people that want to make contact, that would probably be the generic one, or Kath herself. Kath was my initial contact. And I will certainly let you know when it goes live. But for now, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, good to talk to you. Cheers. Thank you. Bye.